Hey guys, your captain is back.
Hey,
Mario Kart World was released a couple of months ago already, and it has been a really fun time. It's probably the best Mario Kart game for me, thanks to its amazing and varied open world, its different themes, and amazing tracks. It's either this or Mario Kart Wii.
wait, stop! You can't start your video like that.
Huh? What's the problem, Grookey?
All your videos about video games have been focused on Mario so far, and people started the console wars due to Sonic racing cross worlds, so people are gonna think you're just a Nintendo fanboy.
You know how these people are. They spend all of their time arguing online, and anyone praising Nintendo is a fanboy for them. But if this can reassure you, I promise to you all that I will release a video about Sonic Adventure 2 in the near future. Happy now?
Yeah, I guess.
Great. Now, let us continue. This begs the question, what will the inevitable DLC look like? Some people are skeptic about the idea of Mario Kart World getting DLC because the game is already very big and took a lot of time to make. But given how this was a launch title and the game that we waited a long time for, plus the fact that most hyped games end up getting DLC or even free updates sooner or later, I can't really see a universe where we wouldn't get this. That means it will probably come in the form of a new island or a new region getting added, so this is especially interesting to talk about. Therefore, you can consider this a secret final part to my series about creating the perfect Mario Kart 9 that I did before the first direct that showed us Mario Kart World in detail. So without further ado, let's go! First things first, since the form that makes the most sense for this DLC is clearly more islands being added, I might as well start by showing you the islands where the 8 new cups of this DLC will take place. Welcome to the Kiru Archipelago. This is a region that would be inspired by Japan. This game feels like you're traveling around the world in a road trip, so taking inspiration from an actual country, just like Pokemon region does, was the logical idea. And Nintendo is Japanese, so making a region based on Japan made the most sense to me. You could get to these islands by taking a boat in Crown City, and the first area you get upon arriving will be the tip of the main island. The region has one big island and 3 more secondary islands, pretty much representing the parts of Japan that I wanted to capture here. The southeast of the main island has one big area that is pretty much like a suburb with several big urban areas. It represents the city of Tokyo. A bit more to the west, you get a more regular grassland, and then a traditional Japanese city that's inspired by Shogun Studios from Paper Mario the Origami King. This area is inspired by both the cities of Kyoto and Osaka, as well as their surroundings. The northern part of the main island is much more rural, with a much more mountainous terrain. The western point of the region is pretty much dedicated to 2 of the 3 secondary islands, one inspired by Japan's tropical island and one inspired from Kyushu, which if you don't know is the island with Fukuoka, one of the most populated Japanese cities, but also the island that inspired the region of Hoenn from Pokemon.
Too much water!
And then, more on the northeast of this region, there's another island, inspired by Hokkaido, Japan's colder island, which will serve for the winter themed tracks. Now, for some guidelines I imposed myself to make this DLC. This DLC will have 8 new cups, like the base game, so I gave myself the restriction that I would have to make 16 new tracks and 16 remakes of retro tracks to remain pretty much equal. Then, I tried to give retro tracks to games that were left behind originally, to make for a more balanced retro section that was just the base game. Each cup will be based around a specific region of Japan. I must also make intermission between the tracks, although I'm only going to talk about the ones you go through in Grand Prix. So we are starting this video with the Golden Dash Cup. Since it's only the first cup of the DLC, this one shouldn't be too ambitious. It should strive to be an easygoing cup to ease people into the DLC. However, this is still the first cup of the DLC, not the first cup of the base game, so it can still make it more challenging and ambitious than the Mushroom Cup.
You say that, but this is the cup that has DK spaceport.
So yeah, these tracks can easily stand out on their own merit too. This cup would mostly take place in the southeast of the main island, in an urbanized region inspired by the city of Tokyo. That way, we can have mostly upbeat tracks to make you excited to continue the DLC, even though the stakes will still ramp up at the final track.
I sorta don't feel like playing my
Circuit?
today.
So we are gonna start by getting the only Mario Kart DS track of this DLC out of the way. Figure 8 Circuit, baby!
Daring today, aren't we?
And yeah, first, this is not a troll. Secondly, it's quite a bold choice to put one of the most infamous tracks in Mario Kart history not only as the first track of this DLC, but also as the only DS track that I remake. But Mario Kart DS already had 3 tracks in the base game, including the fan favorite Airship Fortress. So if any game has to have a more niche track or even hated track for its DLC representation, then this one makes the most sense to be it, even though it's a fan favorite. And in fact, we don't have to keep this track as this, with no obstacles, no shortcuts, and no scenery. We can very well make this track feel a bit more climactic and add more gimmicks to spice up the gameplay and make it an actually exciting introduction. Plus, it's one of the only DS tracks that has never been remade before, and for some reason, Mario Kart World only has tracks that were remade before for its DS representation. And if the revamp is good enough, it could potentially become iconic among fans just for turning a completely empty track into a fun one. So this isn't that bad of a choice, but needless to say, we're still gonna have to give this track a revamp. As much as it defended the idea to remake Figure 8 Circuit sooner or later and not to let it rot into the bin, it's also undeniable that it's still a track that practically has nothing of value outside of the good music. No ramps or speed boosts, no shortcuts, no obstacles, no challenging turns, not even some Goombas walking on the straightaway. So here's my idea to make Figure 8 Circuit actually worthwhile playing compared to the original version.
Not a high bar to cross.
First, instead of taking place in a simple circuit, it will take place in a stadium. And most of the track will take place above a bottomless pit, and it will be a bit tilted, almost as if you were playing the track with anti-gravity, even though it can't tilt it too much since anti-gravity is absent from Mario Kart World. I mostly took inspiration from Peach Stadium for this track.
The actual track, not the fucking paperclip you play in the Shell Cup.
The first turn of the track will have some Goombas you have to avoid. Then, the straightaway will have a lot of opportunities for tricking. Not only will the road be split into some small roads, forcing you to trick on them to avoid falling off, but there are also several metal slopes that allow you to trick and go on some bridges. The last stretch of the track will take place on a muddy road, with a lot of bumps for you to trick on, kinda like in the Mario Kart Wii remake of GCN Waluigi Stadium. This is still far from being the most ambitious track in the DLC, but just with those modifications, it already became more fun, more difficult, and more varied. And since we're talking about a DLC for Mario Kart World, we have to talk about intermissions too. While I'm not gonna talk about these for as much time as the actual tracks, they're still worth imagining. This whole area is like a suburb. You start with a rural road with a shortcut with a wooden plank you can ride or walk right on. Then you go to a peri-urban zone. You can grind on the roof of the houses and walk right on them too. Then you go into the actual city where you play the second track.
It's pronounced Metro City.
As you know, the first variant of Crown City is the second track in the Mushroom Cup. The good thing about it is that it can feel climactic and be fun without being too difficult for Mushroom Cup. So a track that mirrors this one could be a good way to continue the Golden Dash Cup. Since Crown City is modeled to feel like an American-style city, it makes sense for Yakudo City to be modeled to feel like an East Asian or Japan-style city. That way, it could mirror Crown City while standing out as well. And this will be a track with gap changing, though unlike Crown City, all the gaps will be played in Grand Prix, just like with SNES Mario Circuit. The first step would start with you climbing a tilted road to go in an anime-like street full of houses.
I'll work! It's just I can... I don't have any anime reference. Just like in Saikano! Gaston, you're gonna show up every time I mention something Japanese and Korean? Even Ryabumi loves Japan, but he doesn't act like that.
This street will have some mild traffic, but not too much traffic either, so it's not too hot to hit your cuts. By tricking on the road, you can ride on the walls of the houses and grind on the electric wires. I also added a mushroom shortcut through the garden of one of the houses with a small pond. The second part of this step has you speed down the tilted streets with speed boosts and wooden ramps. I took inspiration from the introductory section of the level See the Escape from Sonic Adventure 2 to make this part.
Perfect said Sonic Racing Cross Worlds.
You then turn left to end the lap. Lap 2 has you jump off to go on the sea, before you go to an island inspired by Odaiba, the artificial island of Tokyo. You have a pot in a light gallery with a glowing pond, and you can also grind on a shiny rail too. You then go on top of the gallery to glide to the skyline of the city and trick on some rooftops until you go down on the road again. You turn right and you start the final again. After some turns, you start grinding around the first tower inspired by the Tokyo Skytree. You then go on a platform circling a second tower inspired by the Tokyo Tower. You then grind around the skyline of Yakido City until you go back on the road to end the track. This track would be an excellent way to pump up the excitement of the players, to make them eager to play the rest of the tracks in this DLC. The next intermission will still mostly take place within the city, as the day turns to sunset. The first part has you go in a grassy park until you enter a building. You circle a giant airplane figurine before going back on the road as you go to the beach. In this section, there is a small rail maze that can help you if you handle your grinding well. Finally, you exit the beach to go to the next track.
Choose, climb. Come on, coconut.
The third track in this cup will be Wee Coconut's Mark. This is a choice that might surprise you, because after all, it has never not been in a Mario Kart game since its first appearance. It was remade in Mario Kart 7, then in the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass, but both of these remakes were not that well received by fans, including me, and it's not hard to see why. Mario Kart 7's remake on this track looks really drab, which just makes the whole track feel sad and takes away the joyful summer vacation vibe that this track originally gave. But it also added arrows to the escalators, making that spot way easier, removed the car in that parking lot, and flooded the mark for no reason. They also removed the Mii's, which makes the whole track feel even more empty.
OMG, they predicted 2020!
This already almost made this track Mushroom Cup worthy, despite it being a Flower Cup track originally, but this is not even the last subpar remake of it. In 2022, they botched this track again in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The drab color palette issue has been alleviated, as this remake looks way more colorful than any other version of the track, but the graphics look really ugly, not because of an art style problem, but because it's obvious that this remake was based on the Mario Kart Tour art style, which doesn't really fit Mario Kart 8, and Rushed, which were two things that didn't mix well for this track at all. Even with the donuts they now do, the cars are way easier to avoid than ever before and are barely even obstacles anymore. The arrows on the escalator look even more flashy, which removes the last bit of challenge that the Mario Kart 7 Remake's escalators gave you. And I also find this track very strange as a cup ender. It's made to be a fan favorite, but it doesn't really convey the climactic feeling and or emotions you'd expect in the final track. Its vacation-ish feeling certainly doesn't fit the end of a cup well. So for the Mario Kart World remake, let's try to finally have a version of Coconut Mall that lives up to the original course. So first, let's remove all of the unnecessary changes that the two previous remakes did. The escalators will get rid of their arrows, and the free cars on the parking slot will actually move like in the Wii version. I still kept the guided section and it could offer a good shortcut potential with Mario Kart World's gameplay, especially if you could trick or grind on the parked out of bounds cars. I also added some half-pipes to these two turns on the metal stairs. Finally, I would make the mall more detailed, with more varied shops and out-of-bounds areas that you can only access in this mode. This is because this track has a lot of potential to work well with free roam, especially if this could allow you to visit shops you can't enter otherwise. You could add kid rides there or restaurants here to make the whole mall feel more bustling and make people want to explore it in free roam. Plus, many players seem to like the idea of exploring Coconut's Mall without actually racing back in the day in Mario Kart 3. Like this comment on the first Nintendo Direct in Mario Kart World, which got 12,000 likes. Free roam was made for the kid and me, who used to pretend to shop in Coconut Mall with my brother back in the Wii days. So I think that even though this course has been brought back twice already, fans would definitely like to see a Coconut Mall remake that not only improves on the original Wii track, but that also gives them the opportunity to finally explore the mall freely. That would also be a good way to build up the initial excitement of the players, by throwing in a fan favorite here before we get more ambitious with the end of the cup. The next intermission, we have the day turn to night as you make your way to the final track. This time, you get on a twisty highway at night as you avoid traffic and make sure that you don't fall off the road. After this, the atmosphere gets more and more rural. The asphalt ends up shifting to dirt path as you completely exit the urbanized region of the map. And while the nature here is still thriving, this section is still a surprisingly inhospitable landscape where the woods get darker and darker. You have to avoid patches of grass and mountain moss as you make your way through this intermission. You then start a long gliding section in a lush canyon, and you must choose air currents to keep yourself at a sufficient altitude. You finally get to another town, where you play your last track.
Right, there are ghosts living in this house, and those ghosts are all gathering around us right now!
To end this cup, we're gonna elevate the stakes with a section-based track with a spooky theme. Boo Cinema had a nice theme, but the layout, the obstacles, and even the scenery ended up being subpar, and overall, this track feels like it was rushed. So let's add some more spooky tracks to make up for this. And this first one will be a crossover track with Pokemon. Since this is an icon in Japanese culture and one of the most famous franchises in the world, it makes sense for it to be the franchise that gets some Nitro crossover tracks too. Plus, it would coincide with the big hype period of Pokemon Legends ZA. Lavender Town is one of the most famous locations in the entire Pokemon franchise for a simple reason. Contrasting with the usually upbeat atmosphere of the games and anime, a town that is a literal graveyard for Pokemon, haunted by several ghost types, with an ominous and iconic music playing in the background, was obviously a memory that stuck with the majority of people who played this game as kids back then. So making a track about this town made sense for me.
Warning, don't say this too loudly or you'll scare Gaston again.
Let's now talk about the layout of the track. You start the course by entering Lavender Town in a deserted neighborhood. You start the first section in a graveyard with tombstones and bones to avoid. After this, you grind on the rails of a ghost train. You have to avoid that ghost train while grinding. You then come back on the neighborhood as several egg slashers are attacking you with the swords that you have to avoid. After this, you trick on several platforms before entering the Pokemon Tower to start the second section of the track. You go through a bridge that goes above several ghosts before riding in the indoors graveyard as Gengars and Gastlias are attacking you. You then enter a haunted living room with furniture that's moving everywhere. Then you go into a corridor where you have to avoid several moving red eyes on the ground. After this, there are several Pokemon dolls that Bannet is controlling. They throw projectiles that you have to avoid, but you can also grind on these dolls' loose trains to gain some speed. You then jump in a toy box to get to the gas section. You start it by going to Toy City, while you must avoid a giant bowling ball that is rolling towards you. You enter a dollhouse to climb it, avoid some furniture, and go to the balcony to get to a ghost dimension. You roll on several floating colorful platforms while going from one of them to the other with dices you can trick on, bouncy symbols, and giant wind chimes. Finally, you climb the gas platform while avoiding boulders from a gigantomix canker to end the track. This course would be the perfect way to make the player understand that now the DLC won't be playing around anymore, and that things are gonna get more and more ambitious from now on. But the toy box part would also have free roaming potential, especially if you could explore all the other dollhouses or even some other infrastructures in that toy town, like restaurants, shops, and parks. If this track came to be reality, I think it would be an instant fan favorite, and I for one would be ecstatic. And that's the Golden Dash Cup finished. Honestly, even if this one isn't too ambitious yet, it still stands out on its own merits by easing people into the game before amping up the stakes towards the end.
Amped up T-bone steak.
The next cup is gonna be the Bubble Cup, taking place on a bit more of the west of the main island of this region, in a predominantly coastal area. This place will be mostly inspired by the Japanese city of Osaka and its surroundings. While this cup will also have a rather welcoming atmosphere, its medium difficulty and level of ambition will also rise compared to the previous one. This cup is also going to have its fair share of water-based tracks, since Osaka is a coastal city that's famous for its harbor and aquarium.
Super Silly Pilot! Can we go, please?
I think that just upon saying this choice, you already know where I'm going with this. We do not have any Wii U tracks in Mario Kart World yet, and on one hand, I understand that, since we've been playing Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe for 11 years in total. But on the other hand, I still think that Wii U tracks deserve some kind of representation, so I'm not opposed to having one or two of them in a DLC. You might be surprised by me choosing Water Park, because this might be the most hated Wii U track, and disclaimer, I think this track sucks too. One of the coolest ideas for a track, completely wasted due to being too early in the base game and just having all the cool stuff in the background, with nothing of value in the actual layout. But I think some people already understood why I chose this track. You see Peach Beach there before? It was a simple double dash track in the shape of a B that would become an oval with the water driving mechanic of Mario Kart World. So naturally, when we learned that this track would be in the second half of the game, we were skeptical. But then, Nintendo took all of us by surprise by giving a changing lap mechanic to this track, so the second and third lap take place in a completely different area and outshine the layout of the previous versions of the track. This alone made this course iconic again, so I think Water Park is the perfect track to get this treatment to. This track is a waste of a cool idea, yes, but with changing laps, we could have laps 2 and 3 finally live up to the potential of this track. First, the changes I make to the first lap. I replaced the underwater sections by floating sections, as expected. On the first one, I added 2 helipads to trick on. On the second one, you have to go on several islands to do sort of island hopping race while avoiding the grass. But the true show begins on the second lap, where after the straightaway, you suddenly turn left to actually go on the ride. You first go around the spinning carousel before entering a haunted mansion ride. You have to avoid the flames from the chimney and some flying books. Then, you're shot out of the window as you climb on a roller coaster. It could maybe be the Waluigi seabed ride you can see in the background of the original Wii U track. There are speed boosts everywhere on this coaster, along with wide but twisty turns and brutal hills you can trick on, but also some walls you can ride on. After a loop-de-loop like in DS Rainbow Road, you can trick off the coaster to get back on the normal route and finish the lap. I took inspiration from Disney California Adventure's Incredicoaster to make this whole section. For the third lap, you start the track normally, but at the point where you usually turn right to dive in the water, you continue straight to enter an artificial tropical cave. You then trick off the road to go on a water slide where running water will speed you up. You must be careful not to fall off, because not all of this section has walls. Halfway through the section, you get on an artificial temple with a whirlpool you must enter to continue, kind of like the whirlpool slide in Six Flags Fiesta, Texas.
That's what we call an amusement park nerd.
You then go through another helix before exiting the cave as you end the track by being shot out of a cannon back to the starting line. This remake would be an excellent way to redeem what was originally the most hated Wii U track, by making it live up to its true potential and making it feel like an actual day at an amusement park. You then, once again, go on an intermission. This one will have you leave the water park to go to a beach. After jumping back on the actual road, you climb on a bridge that you can also grind on. This bridge is tilted at 45 degrees for you to be able to get to the summit of this cliff. You then climb this small rocky cliff while avoiding boulders. After performing some more turns and entering another district, you go to the next track.
Wow, Kinger, check out this castle!
Generally, I think that in a game or DLC with that amount of cups, the ideal amount of circuits is to have two of them. One basic circuit track and one more complex circuit track. And I decided that the complex one for this DLC should be Royal Raceway. The reason is very simple. The amount of Mario Kart World mechanics that would work really well with this track. First, there's the changing gap gimmick. And
Remember, you have to stop this video now. They're making a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass 2 and they're putting Royal Raceway in it.
now, Rookie, this is obviously fake news. Royal Raceway is literally in base Mario Kart 8. What's your source?
Bang Image Creator. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, let's not talk about this. So I'm gonna continue. The first mechanic that would work really well with this track is the changing gap gimmick. This is because in the original version of this track, you could go to the gardens of Peach's castle. It was completely useless, but it was a cool Easter egg that most people have fond memories of nevertheless. So I think it would be cool to see this become a mandatory route in Lap 2, where you get to go to the castle before gliding back to the road to do the final lap backwards. The second mechanic that would be pretty cool to see in this track is free roam, because exploring the more accurate Peach's castle in this mode would be really fun, and fans would probably love this. So here's my idea for a glow up of this track. First, the first third of this track has been turned into a little town with pink houses. You can grind on rails that go from one house to another. I also added some rails on the hills that come after the glider section. But the true changes come in Gap 2, because here, after the gliding section, you go in the gardens of Peach's castle for the same path as in the N64 version. Then you have a short version in the castle itself. You then glide through the window while tricking on several giant fans to get back on the road. You then play the final lap backwards. This version of Royal Raceway would be really refreshing, and a cool way to improve on Peach's Castle Easter egg of the original version of the track.
Yeah, no, we can't. They confirmed they removed it because they put the whole kingdom in lockdown because of the dwarves.
For the next intermission, you start by leaving the town after a roundabout before going into the sea. You then have a water section with several trick ramps and the sea monster. Afterwards, you go for a harbor, where you can grind on a beam that a crane is lifting. After a couple more turns where you can perform more grinding tricks on other beams, you finally get to the next track, and the only nitro course in that cup.
Mushroom?
So the next one is gonna be an important track. You see, in each Mario Kart game, you have these tracks that are really made to have a wacky theming ever since Double Dash. Whether it's Daisy Cruiser in Double Dash, Super Battle Subway in 8, or even Poo Poo Cinema in World. But since Boo Cinema remains quite simple in its layout and obstacles, I think the game could use a second track with a wacky theme like this. And since we're in a loosely water-themed cup that takes place in an area inspired by Osaka and its surroundings, I thought imagining an aquarium-themed track made complete sense. In fact, back when I was predicting the Nitros on Mario Kart 9's base game before they actually made the directs about Mario Kart World, I predicted this exact track to be about halfway through the game. But since this was before we found out about the mirror concept of Mario Kart World, I added underwater driving to the track, meaning it wouldn't really work with the DLC. So let's update this layout now. You start the track by entering the aquarium and going near a basin, before entering a clear pipe that goes from it, like in the OG Coupe Cape. In that pipe, there are half pipes and rails you have to use to avoid electricity panels. After this, you go through a short corridor, and you go on glaciers above a polar basin with penguins to dodge. Then, you switch to a tropical basin with geysers and e-mouths that are trying to munch you from underneath you. The final basin is an outdoors dolphin show basin. You can choose between going for speed boosts on the longer path or taking the chance of trying to trick on the dolphin's back. You then end the track after a couple of tight turns. This track would really have the potential to be the Coconut Mall or the Daisy Cruiser of this DLC, with various obstacles and visuals based on the aquarium theme and a simple yet packed layout. The last intermission of this cup starts with a roundabout that has a shortcut on a grassy island in the center of a lake. You then glide to a desertic area that is inspired by dunes you can find near Osaka to enter a giant cave. This cave has crystal obstacles and split paths that either have you grind to go faster or let you take it safe with a slower path. You then exit the cave to enter a river in a canyon as the day just turns to sunset, where you have to avoid tentacles or grind on them. You then go back on the road to get near an arid mountain where you'll play your last track.
Nobody ever stands up to Sunset Shimmer.
So we all know and hate the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe remake of Sunset Wild for so many reasons. First, the obvious one. The sun setting as the laps progress, which is the main gimmick of this track, was removed. Probably because the guiding system of this game that presumably couldn't handle it, which makes me wonder why Nintendo even decided to bring this course back to begin with. But there are other problems. The graphics in general look really rush, even for the booster course passes more cartoony art style. The layout has been neutered way too much. They literally took out 2 whole turns near the end for no reason other than to oversimplify the gameplay, because playing with controls that are smoother than Patrick Star's brain wasn't enough to make this track baby level easy. So even though this track has already been brought back in the previous game, I feel that making a remake that actually improves it would do it much more justice and make the fans of this track way happier than whatever Mario Kart 8 Deluxe came up with. And with the day and night cycle, this course could get a whole new makeover, while still respecting its origins by starting at sunset and having the track turn to night by the end of it in Grand Prix. But since this gimmick isn't special anymore, nor are you feasible in VS Race or Free Roam, we're also gonna have to give a Choco Mountain style glow up to this track by giving it a whole new theme as well. That's right, we're turning Sunset Wells into a full fossil extraction station.
Because if you want an eco-friendly hero, Sonic's right there.
Turning Sunset Wells into a fossil extraction station would honestly be sick. And here is the layout of that remake. First, at the start of the track, you climb a canyon to get to the Fossil Mountain. Here, you must avoid several boulders falling, which contain fossils that you must avoid. Then, after a short muddy section, you enter inside the station. You must avoid a skeleton's fiery breath while trying to trick on the ground fans, and grind on another skeleton that doesn't compete. After this, you get to a bigger muddy puddle with a giant skeleton in it. You can try to grind on it to not get slowed down by the mud. You then get back in the canyon. You can either speed on speed boosts to go down the normal way, or grind to get on the bone bridge and jump down on the sandy road again, which is faster but harder. You then end the track normally. This track would be an excellent way to cap off the Bubble Cup. It makes the fans happy about having one of their favorite GBA tracks finally brought back with a worthy remake, while surprising them with a new take on the track as well. And that's the Bubble Cup all wrapped up and done. While it's still on the simpler side, it's a good follow-up to the Golden Dash Cup, as we're already starting to get tracks that are harder and more packed with various obstacles than the previous one, with Sunset Wilds being a good teaser for what to expect in the next cup. Because next up, we've got the Rock Cup. This cup would rather take place in the northern area of the main island, which is a place mostly inspired by the mountains on the northern side of Honshu, Japan's main island. Since this area is quite rural, the Rock Cup will stray away from urban themes and opt for more rural, natural, and wild theme. That would be a nice way to start to amp up the stakes, to show that the DLC won't play around anymore, and progressively give you more unique, exotic, and less hospitable locations to race in. It will also be a bit more mountain based, since the north of Honshu is also known to be quite mountainous, and a good spot for hiking from what I've seen.
These donuts are great! Jelly-filled are my favorite! Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut!
So the reason why I put this track at the start of the Rock Cup is simple. You see, in Mario Kart World, the majority of Super Mario Kart tracks have some kinds of callbacks in the map, where it's the 3 Ghost Valleys near Boo Cinema, the Choco Islands near Choco Mountain, the Vanilla Lakes in the Snowy region, the Koopa Beach 2 remake and the Koopa Beach 1 callback just near it, as well as the Mario Circuit track that combines 3 variants of the Super Mario Kart theme into one track. There are 3 themes that didn't get a callback though. Rainbow Road is a logical omission, and I can kinda see it for Bowser's Castle, even though it would be cool to remake one, and
Spoiler alert.
I'm going to do just that in a later cup. But one that I just don't understand is their choice to omit a Rice Ball Plains callback. There's a huge grassland and a forest region in the map. It would have been so easy to add one near Moo Moo Meadows, or better yet, make it part of the track, since despite being from Mario Kart Wii, which is my favorite Mario Kart game with World, it remains a rather simple track, with not much going on that had nothing to do in the fucking Lightning Cup. But better fixing this late than never. I decided to start this cup with a track that combines 3 Rice Ball Plains courses into one. More specifically, SNES Rice Ball Plains 2, SNES Rice Ball Plains 3, and Remix Rice Ball Plains 1. Okay, the joke has lasted for long enough, I'm gonna stop doing that now. I replaced SNES Donut Plains 1 with the remix track because the former isn't that interesting and just passes off as a diet version of Donut Plains 2, and adding that remix track could give Thor a bit more representation than just the only remake of its nitros that it's getting in this cup.
Reabum, I already said it. You can't make such a big hint to a track you're gonna include in your selection while trying to build up suspense. Pick one. The suspense or the reveal.
But something that I didn't really like with Mario Circuit is, apart from the idea of combining 3 tracks of the Dark type into one, it remains a very simple track. I get that remaining quite simple and focusing on pure driving can also be part of the charm of a Mario Circuit, especially when you combine this to a more complex layout like in the DS version. But here, we're talking about a special cup track, so you'd still expect something more complex for Mario Circuit and not just a completely flat track. For goodness sake, add some elevation! Nobody likes a flat track with no elevation and just road in the fucking special cup! So for Donut Plains, I'm actually gonna give an actual revamp to the track that I combined, while the Dane turns to Sunset as you play, and here's how I would do it. You start the track with Donut Plains 2. The first part of this lap is simple, until you turn left and you get on a rocky canyon with boulders that you have to avoid. You must avoid falling into the lake as well, but you can also perform a risky shortcut by landing on the grind rail above the water if you time your jump well. The second part of this lap takes you to Snowy Mountain with a slippery ice path with many cracks that give you a lot of opportunities for tricking. You then glide towards the next lap on a straightaway that takes you to Donut Canes 3. You turn right to enter a big tree. You must avoid sting bees attacking you from the leaves. Then, while going down the tree, you must avoid the holes that open up in the bridge. You then have a swamp section where you must jump from one owl to another through several big logs. You can also grind in the trees as well. You then go to the final lap, Remix Donut Canes 1. The track starts normally with you going on the lily pads, except you continue by floating on the lake while avoiding some rocks. You then bounce on mushrooms before going on a cloud to glide to a mountain while avoiding giant beanstalks. You then glide again from that mountain while trying to trick on giant clovers before turning right to end the track. This course would probably be a much more memorable way to combine 3 Super Mario Kart tracks sharing a theme into one than Mario Circuit, with an actual glow-up and more variety in general. The next intermission starts with you speeding in the grassland before you start climbing a canyon. Here, you can jump and grind on a house's rooftop to perform a shortcut. You then go down a rocky road with speed boosts while avoiding boulders as the sunset turns to night. You then trick on several holes in the road before falling in a lake. Here, there are several geysers you can trick off of as you go to the next track.
Wow! That's
This next track idea is a bit more of a peculiar one. You see, Japan has a huge culture of hot springs, especially onsens, due to being at the junction of 4 tectonic plates and therefore having a lot of volcanoes. So I think that a track inspired by hot springs would fit very well in a region inspired of Japan.
We see what you're about to do, guys. Don't do it! Don't do it!
And I think it would fit perfectly here, because this theme didn't inspire me that many ideas, so I already knew it should be a short track, to not overstay its welcome like something like Boo Cinema or Starview Peak. Here's the layout. You start the track by jumping in the hot springs, where you can trick on several underwater ramps and geysers. Then, you enter a small house where there's a giant sand pit where you must avoid monsters that are trying to munch your cart from underneath you. You climb to the higher story of the house, and you must avoid several muck puddles, just like the feast layer in DK Bonanza. You then circle the house, you jump off of it, and you turn left to go to the hot springs. You must trick on the ways, avoid puddles of muck, and the monsters that spit them. In a whirlpool you must avoid falling in before ending the track. This track would be very short, but with its variety, it would be memorable and fun, despite being a bit more relaxing and laid back than what comes next in the cup. The next intermission starts in a grassy canyon. You start by going through a muddy puddle where you must go on 2 islands to avoid being slowed down by the mud. You then turn right as you speed towards the tunnel that takes you to a gliding section in a grassy open space. You can trick on the top of rocks that are covered with moss, grind between them, and go on the mountains to wall ride on them. You then go into an autumnal forest, where you can trick on some walls before circling a giant tree. You have to avoid falling into some pits, but you can also grind on rails above them. You then go on a straightaway on the top of the tree, where you must also avoid rolling apples before going to the next track through a wooden bridge.
I'll save you! Tree powers activate!
So my reason for imagining this next track is a bit more peculiar. You see, in Paper Mario The Origami King, the second chapter strays away from the classic grasslands, desert, or sea theme, and instead opts for an autumnal theme inspired by classical East Asian traditions. It's the most popular chapter of the game, and it's not hard to see why. It just looks gorgeous with its combination of these 2 popular themes. So having a track like this in a region inspired by Japan made sense to me. And since you can also find a lot of train rides with far views in this country, making enjoying the train corkscrew was a winning idea for me.
Da 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 da. Then there was trouble.
To sum it up, imagine this track as a bit of a mix between Maple Treeway, Whistle Stop Summit, and Super Bell Subway. I think this could be a really cool idea that would become an instant fan favorite if it were to happen. But anyway, here's the layout. You start the track by entering a giant sawmill factory. Here, you turn right, then you jump on the grind rails that are held by logs. You can then jump on the wall and trick back on conveyor belts or use those platforms. Those conveyor belts would work a bit like in Toad's factory, with one being fast and one slowing you down. You then turn right to go on the train tracks of the Arden subway. There are two rails you can grind on, a bit like in Whistle Stop Summit, but with turns that are harder to manage. You must also avoid falling off the track, which makes this take on the tracks idea more difficult. You can jump on several scenery elements like wooden billboards, tree trunks, and grind rails to take shortcuts, and you must also avoid the train that is rolling in the opposite direction as you. You climb back on a wooden road to speed on a twisty bridge before gliding towards the starting line to end the lap. This will be a very fun track to see in this DLC with a creative theme, varied obstacles, a fun layout, and a higher difficulty than a track like Whistle Stop Summit. In fact, in a way, for Sonic fans, it could almost feel like Whistle Stop Summit Act 2. The next intermission starts in the maple forest with shaking bridge with jagged rails, as a callback to Maple Treeway.
Alright, here we go.
Calm down, rookie, you'll be able to do this off-screen. You get to a grassland where you must avoid parrot bitterbugs before entering a cave. In the cave, you must avoid falling into the abyss, while there are several icy cracks that are slippery but that you can trick on. You then fall into rapids with logs you can grind on. You must avoid polka puffers before going down a waterfall and trick on some logs. You may then turn right to go to the gas track on this cup.
Whoa, now this is a naked pipe. There might be kids playing this level.
And as you may have guessed it, the gas track of this cup is the only Tor Nitro that still hasn't got its remake, Piranha Plant's Pipeline, or as I'm gonna call it, Warp Pipe Canyon.
Because otherwise, this is the Escumber Circuit, this is Wayo Piranha Plant Cake, and this is GCN Flower Fields.
I'm still annoyed that out of all the tracks from Mario Kart Tour, they decided to voluntarily give out one of them from the Booster Course Pass, which is made for preserving tour tracks, as this game is not mainlined and will probably not last forever. Now, we can only play this track legit during 2 weeks of the year, which is just bullshit. My theory is that they wanted to end Wave 2 with this track since it would fit well in the slot while having Sky High Sunday as World Nitro, but Warp Pipe Canyon was too janky to work well in the Booster Course Pass, so we got Sky High Sunday in Tour and 8 Deluxe instead, so Wave 2 could still have a quote-unquote new track. But still, that's a really dumb idea to get a track with so many good ideas lost in a shitty mobile game like Mario Kart Tour. So it's more than time that this track gets a proper remake, so it can finally shine and unveil its true potential in the mainline Mario Kart game. Here is how I would improve the track. First, the green pipe will be scattered with speed boosts and trick ramps above bottomless pits to make the whole thing more framed. I also added grind rails that go out of the pipe and allow you to take shortcuts. After the glider section, the road splits in two pipes, like in the original, except these two paths are now radically different. The red pipe has rotten piranha plants, spitting toxic liquid on the floor that you have to avoid. Then, in the clear pipe, you must avoid piranha creeper roots. For the blue pipe, not only do you have to slide in a current of water that speeds you up, you must also avoid piranha plants that try to munch on you from the sides. After you go through one of these two sections, the roads connect again. You then have to ascend a water current that slows you down while trying to trick on it before gliding towards the starting line. This remake would be an excellent way to do this track justice after it being snubbed from the booster course pass. Plus, with a bigger emphasis on piranha plants, its English name would finally make sense. And we're done with the Rock Cup. By continuing to increase the difficulty and taking place in a more rural area of the region, this cup manages to make the general atmosphere of the DLC more unwelcoming than the two previous cups, to show that we won't be playing around anymore, and that we're getting more intense from now on, but by doing it smoothly with tracks that don't get too chaotic in terms of atmosphere, except for the last one, that pumps up the stakes as a nice teaser for the next cup. Because this next one is the Fire Cup. This one would take place on the southwestern area of the main island and would be themed after Kyoto and its surroundings, taking on a more traditional Japanese theme. This would allow the cup to be more energetic than the previous ones, with a more inhospitable atmosphere, more intricate layouts, more varied obstacles, and a theme that will make some tracks a bit more chaotic, which would really be important for the midway point of the DLC.
20 centuries of bamboo growing awaits you!
We're gonna start this cup with a track that remains a bit more simple than the next three, but that will still be harder than what we came through, so the player can realize that things are really gonna start to get harder from now on. An idea that would fit the DLC perfectly, and that in fact I'm surprised we still didn't get until now, is a bamboo themed track. This would honestly be a simple but very diverse idea that could really fit a temple themed track. You'd get through bamboo structures to explore a Japanese Tao temple. So since this would likely have a more laid-back atmosphere than the next three tracks, but a harder layout, it's the perfect opener for the midway cup of the DLC.
Peace, Japan! Did anyone say peace, Japan?
You start the track by turning right to get into Bamboo Forest. Here, you can try to grind from bamboo to go faster. Then, you must get through river by going on bamboo bridges that connect its two sides. Except these bridges have running water on them, and you must trick from bridge to bridge to avoid falling off. You then enter the temple. Here, there are several bamboo structures to trick on, and a bamboo bridge that is partially broken and that is shaking a bit. You can also rail grind above the holes that opened up in the bridge. You then glide above the river. There are bamboo flutes that produce air currents that you can use to trick and bamboo monsters that shoot lightning at you. You can wall ride on these panels for shortcut as well. Finally, you have a parkour section on bamboo ground rails above a gate, with several optional and mandatory rails and twisty turns. You then glide above the finish line to end the gap. This would really be a good start for the Fire Cup, with a calm yet original theme and an intricate layout to get players excited for this cup, and show them that this midway point is going to be a difficulty spike. The next intermission starts in a traditional Japanese street with stairs you can trick off, wooden sticks you can grind on, and speed boosts you can go on with wall riding. Then you enter a small arena where there are ninjas fighting. Then you go underground to avoid a couple of spikes. After this, you go in the water, while you must avoid falling off waterfalls. There are also boos attacking you here. You then exit the temple to get to a lava wasteland to enter the next track.
It's from Bowser!
The sequel!
You're probably going to be surprised by this pick. SNES Bowser Castle 2 is far from being a popular track, not only in the Mario Kart fanbase, but even within the low popularity standards of the Super Mario Kart tracks. A lot of people consider it to be the worst Mario Kart track ever made, due to its brutal difficulty, even for SNES track standards, that frustrated many players. Even though I understand why a lot of people hate it, I think it's overhated. I like how this track never stops the action, from fast-paced series of jumps to a trapped road and a double roundabout. With all of this, I think that if this track got a glow up, it would probably become one of the best tracks in the series, especially with wall riding, grinding, and gliding. The track starts normally, but before the second turn, you climb a volcanic wall. You must avoid lava boulders that are rolling towards your carts. You must also avoid falling into some holes, and you can grind and wall ride on this whole volcanic canyon. You then enter a giant laboratory that belongs to Bowser. You can try and grind above the green slime to take shortcuts and skip the roundabouts. But then, I also have to talk about what I did to the fake route. I added a ramp that takes you to the outer walls of the laboratory, so you can wall ride and grind on the roof.
Okay, I just got a letter from the doctor. He diagnosed you with a case of Comp Andy.
Anyway, you end the track with a grinding section above lava. I was kinda bummed that the base game didn't have any mandatory grinding or wall riding sections, so you're probably gonna notice that I'm gonna add a lot of them from now on, just to make them more relevant in the DLC. So yeah, let's add one of them here. On the rails, you'd have to be careful of portables attacking you. Then, you turn right, you glide between several lava rocks, and this is how the track ends. I think this will be an excellent way for SNES Bowser Castle 2 to redeem itself and become a much more popular track than before. Despite this, it still doesn't really fit as the last track of a cup because it's not that climactic, so it being the second track instead fits as a way to amp up the stakes after a more relaxing bamboo shrine. For the next intermission, you exit the castle through a gliding section. You go through a giant sakura tree for a moment with a lot of rails you can grind on. You must also avoid the holes that opened up in the bridges. Then, you must bounce on several mushrooms above a bottomless pit, before going back on the ends to go through a traditional garden. After this spot, you enter a temple where you'll play your next track.
Old people are the greatest. They're full of wisdom and experience.
If you played Mario Kart 7, then you probably remember the original version of Piranha Plant Slide and how it differs from the remake from Mario Kart 8 that more people know the track for. This original version had a very unique idea. It was a track that took inspiration from very old Mario games, especially the underground levels of the first Super Mario Bros. Game. As such, the aesthetics were a bit more cartoony than in the other tracks of this game, to look more like the graphics from an NES game. In the underground section that makes for the majority of the track, the Goombas are blue instead of brown, just like they are in the underground levels of the original Super Mario Bros. Game. In the smaller outdoor section of the track, you even find cardboard cutouts of Goombas and bushes that look just like they did in the OG Super Mario Bros. Game.
And so, men discovered the true power of nostalgia bait.
This theme largely got toned down in Mario Kart 8 to adapt to the usually realistic art style of this game, but I think we can do better than what we got in Mario Kart 7 and make a full track based on retro Mario games, going further than just the underground levels. So putting this track as the penultimate course of the Midway Cup is perfect, because while it's still upbeat and exciting in tone, its unique theme and intricate chaos prepares you for the chaos of the last track and of the second half of the game. So let's get to how the track would play out. You start the track by using a ramp to jump in a portal that takes you to a pixelated dimension that looks like an NES game. You first perform a series of jumps on mushroom tree platforms before you glide towards Bowser's castle. You then grind on rails to ride on the walls of the castle before going back on a rocky platform. After this, you ride on several gears that are spinning to exit the castle. You enter a pipe to go down in the underground section of the track. You jump on pipes and moving platforms, and you have to be careful not to fall off in a bottomless pit. Then, in the roundabout, you have to avoid a piranha plant, and you can wall ride on wall 2. After exiting the underground section, you go on a bridge with cheap sheeps jumping towards you. You must also avoid falling on the holes that opened up in it due to the cheap chips breaking through it. You can grind on the top of the bridge too. You then go back on the land before diving underwater. You have a section with air currents that allow you to trick while you must avoid bloopers. Then, you get to a canyon where you must trick, go on air currents, and grind to remain at a good altitude without gliding. You then exit the water to go back on the land and glide out of the mansion back to the temple to end the trek. I think this course would be a perfect spiritual successor to Piranha Plant Slide. This is one of the tracks I could really see become a fan favorite if they were to happen, and a great way to warm up people for the halfway mark of the DLC too. You start the last intermission by going into second garden, then into a corridor where bob-ombs are roaming, and you have to avoid them. You then have to trick above traps in the corridor. After this, You exit the temple to go to a muddy street where you can grind on the rooftops. You go through a bridge to enter a building where you play your gas track.
Well, I think you need to be more flexible.
For the midpoint of the DLC, I had the idea of making a track that differs from the other ones. The idea is simple. This track will intend to feel like a boss battle, just like DK Spaceport does with the Donkey Kong animatronic. This track will take place in the Shogun Theater of Paper Mario, the Origami King. It will have the rubber band boss attack you with his rubber bands. The course will be split into several parts of the scene, each themed after a different type of scenery with an arts and crafts aesthetic. That way, the track can feel unique enough to be climactic as a midpoint, while not being so epic that it steals the show for the finale. Although many of my rubber bands personally were wasted to fulfill the Nintendo Labo projects.
Ribbon, I don't think it's how you're supposed to do it.
So here's how the track will play out. You start the track by entering the theater. Then you turn right and you circle the seats. After this, you enter a portal to get on the scene and to start the acting. The first part is in a scene mimicking an undersea landscape. You must avoid paper cheap-cheeps before going into a paper cave with fake water currents. You then go through a temple with pits and spikes to avoid before gliding towards the next scene, mimicking an arid canyon. You have a wooden platform you can trick off and grind rails that allow you to roll right on the walls. You also have to avoid several giant stones and crystals once you get to this cave. You then grind through the cave above a bottomless pit before getting higher to get to an icy canyon. With ice cracks you have to avoid staying on for too long, because otherwise they'll collapse. The third scene is inspired by Swan Lake. After a roundabout, you go through a boardwalk above the lake, with grind rails allowing you to take some shortcuts above the holes. You must also bounce on the boat roofs to get to Rocky Island before grinding on the giant swan's neck. Then, you get on a bridge to jump on the next scene. It's a giant Japanese temple. You enter it to face ninjas attacking you that you must avoid. In the next room, you avoid pits of lava. Then, you get to a room with 2 levels. The upper road is faster but harder to go through, while the lower path is slower but easier to go through, even though it exposes you to the upper platform that can crush you with spikes. You then go on a lake with the pads you must trick on, even though you can also wall ride for a shortcut. You then go through corridors with speed boosts where you get to the next scene, which is a sky-based scene. You start the scene with a garden island before going through a bridge with holes in it. You can also grind on the sides. You then go through a temple with hot springs, and you can trick on the sides of these springs too. After this spot, you get through a twisted bridge with a lot of grind rails and speed boosts. You then go to the next scene, based on a haunted mansion. The first room has you avoid several giant Mr. Eyes. After this, you go through a corridor with a grassy off-road where a giant mouth is chasing your cart. You must also go around a gooey lake with grind rails. You then go through a quick side section with grind rails and wooden crates. You then speed through another corridor to exit the mansion and ride on the outdoor wall, before getting on the last scene, which is based on space. You first trick on 2 small spaceships, before going through a corridor in a bigger ship, with a long conveyor belt that speeds you up. Then, in the next room, several holes try to suck your cards, and there are lasers you must avoid by tricking above them. The final straightaway has you trick on several ramps while you avoid holes and giant rubber bands, before you get to the top on it to end the track by beating rubber band. This track will be an amazing spiritual successor for the DK Spaceport, but also an amazing midpoint for the game by being longer than most of the other tracks in the DLC, and feeling like a boss battle with rubber bands attacking the track with rubber bands continuously. It would also be a nice, epic gauntlet and a good test of skills to see how good you've gotten until now for the midway point of the DLC. And we finished the Fire Cup. This is a perfect midpoint for the DLC, being hard with a final track that almost feels like a boss battle, but still not too climactic, so it doesn't steal the show for the final cup, giving players wanting even more for the second half of the DLC. The next cup is gonna be the Fruit Cup. This time, it's gonna take place on a tropical island, inspired by the ones you find to the south of Japanese mainland, hence why it's the Fruit Cup. It's gonna start with more laid-back vibes than the previous cup, but for its second half, it's gonna continue with more adventurous tracks. It's also gonna be difficult enough to kick in the second half of the game in an exciting and upbeat way.
Do you like eggs?
This first track will still have an intricate layout like the tracks in the previous cup. However, as I just said, its theme will be more laid back and joyful than the previous courses. Because it will be the beach track of this DLC, being themed around Yoshi and having fruits as obstacles and platforms as well makes sense. That way, this track will feel laid back and joyful to breathe a bit after the previous cup, but it will still be challenging in its own merits, with tight turns and a lot of different gimmicks to handle, so you still know what to look out for the second half of this DLC, as you understand that now the game isn't holding your hand anymore. In short, it's gonna be a beach track, but with more source and difficulty than Cheep Cheep Beach, Cheep Cheep Cape, or Koopa Troopa Beach.
Either the track in Mario Kart 64 or the Koopa Beach 2 remake in Mario Kart World works for that last mention.
You start the track with a straightaway, until you get around a giant egg. Here, there is a mysterious monster that could maybe be Dino Piranha attacking you with his claws that you have to avoid. Maybe he could even hatch and become harder to avoid on the final gap. Then, you jump into rapids, Cheep Cheep Falls style, but those rapids are a bit tighter with split paths and off-road sections to watch out for, but these also have more tricking opportunities, making this part even more chaotic than Cheep Cheep Falls. You then end up going on the sea, where you must avoid Purple Slide and the Nepnuts, which are enemies from Yoshi's Island that are spitting in the water. You then come back on the beach to speed on it with speed boosts. The next part is on spinning fruits, and it works a bit like the gears in TikTok clock, as you have to adapt to the direction you take while drifting on the fruits that are spinning. You can also wall ride on the giant square pineapple.
Pizza, anyone? I like it better with ramen noodles, personally.
You then go back on the land, and after a U-turn, you enter a big crystal cave, similar to the one in Dandelion Depths. The first part has you avoid obstacles such as a porcupuffer or eggs while floating on the water. Then, you take a U-turn to ride on waterfalls, and you must watch out because they push you horizontally, putting you at risk of falling. Then, you perform some turns, as you must watch out for crystal stalactites before exiting the cave to end the track. This course will probably be the best beach track ever made if it were to become a reality, with more varied obstacles, a more lively atmosphere, a more joyful and engaging theme, and a harder layout, perfect to start the Fruit Cup. The next intermission first takes you near the jungle coastline. You then jump in the water. You can grind on tentacles before you get to a whirlpool. Here, you must avoid the monster that is trying to swallow you in the middle of the whirlpool, and you can also grind on the floating rocks to gain some speed. In the next section, you can grind on the floating bubbles to gain altitude and take shortcuts. You can grind on some destroyed parts of a sunken ship before you go into a temple, where you'll play the next track.
Me and my big mouth again!
The next track will still have a rather laid-back atmosphere, but compared to the previous course that was really upbeat and joyful, this one will be more mysterious, with a darker and more cautious setting. It will be set in a cave in the middle of the sea, with a ruins temple. This cave will only be populated by moray eels that try to attack you, giving this track a more solitary and cautious atmosphere than no course in Mario Kart World really replicates from now. You start the track by gliding towards the starting line to end the previous intermission. The first part of the track has a lot of split paths and square corners, making it harder to master. And what's more, moray eels try to munch on you from several underwater caves, and they will sometimes go from one cave to another, forcing you to avoid them. You can also bounce, wall ride, and grind on them, giving this first part of the track a really big shortcut potential. After this, you go on an artificial lake with a small waterfall to avoid falling into before you enter a giant cave. Here, water is dripping on the ground, and you're surrounded by submerged cave where moray eels live. They will have the same pattern as earlier in the track, but for the title road, they are even harder to avoid. You can wall ride to jump above these caves and go faster. Then you go to the second part of the cave. This time you get on wooden structures with gab cars that allow you to trick and take shortcuts. Finally, after speeding on some speed boosts, you jump above a Mario hill, exit the cave, and end the track. This course will be a perfect follow-up to the previous one, following a happy and upbeat track with a laid back but cautious and mysterious one, and keeping a high level of difficulty. The next intermission has you get back on the ends to continue your journey. You first go through two roundabouts with piranha plants trying to attack you. Then you enter a jungle. You first grind above a canyon where you can ride on the stone walls as well. Then you get to a twisty bridge that goes between the trees, Vancouver Velocity style. This one has half pipes and you can grind on the guardrails as well. You then go back on the land thanks to a ramp. After this, you grind on some vines before you exit the jungle to go to the next track.
Now remember, we keep it cheap by going to the park.
Lakeside Park is probably one of the most popular tracks from Mario Kart Super Circuit. This track has a cool jungle theme and a fun layout with challenging, twisty turns and some insane shortcuts that really test your driving skills upon starting the Special Cup. But what really made this track stand out is the volcano. Basically, on lap 2, this volcano in the background erupts. The sunny weather turns dark and cloudy, and lava rocks start to form the track, making things even harder. It may not be a lot today, but on a game where all the tracks are flat, Nintendo really managed to find creative ways to make the tracks stand out on their own merits, and Lakeside Park's volcano certainly made it more memorable for a lot of people. And I'm sure that at the time, this eruption was also the sign that this cup wasn't playing around with you, and that this wasn't going to be an easy one.
Actually, that's nice and all, but you didn't grow up with this game. Stay in your lane, bozo. Secondly, Mario Kart Super Circuit is developed by Intelligent Systems, not Nintendo.
But yeah, all of this to say, this is probably one of the more memorable GBA tracks for its unique volcano mechanic and its high difficulty. As such, it's the perfect track to pick up the pace of the Fruit Cup after the previous two tracks, which were a bit more laid back. Plus, many fans, me included, have expressed interest in seeing this track get a Mario Kart 8 style overhaul, especially if you could go through the volcano. And yeah, combining the lake, volcano, mountain, and jungle themes, this track could easily be among the most varied and memorable ones in the DLC. So here's how I would reimagine it. First, you go for a straightaway until going on a treetop bridge. You can use a half pipe on the top of it, but also grind on the sides. After some twisty turns, you get back on the land until you end up on a floating boardwalk that's broken. This time, you go into the lake. You can trick on the floating rocks and on the waves. Then, you start to climb the rocky part of this volcano. You can grind on some of the ropes that are placed between the edges on this canyon, but you can also trick on several cracks in the road. Maybe there could even be boulders or lava meteors falling on this part of the track, since we're very close to the crater. Speaking of, after the big jump, you go into said crater. You have to jump from one rock to another while avoiding some holes that open up in those rocks so you don't fall off in the lava. You can also wall ride on that dry bones corpse and try for a shortcut.
When you say it like that makes it feel really sus.
Then you exit the volcano by guiding towards the starting line to end the track. Along with this, we could add some scenery elements to improve the free roam potential, like a village in the treetop section or some islands on the lake. This course would be a really fun way to make Lakeside Park a fan favorite again, with a varied scenery, a big panel of gimmicks and obstacles, and a good shortcut potential. And it's about time we get a remake of this course that doesn't remove 300 turns. So yeah, I'd be so happy if we got this. For the last intermission, you go into the sea again. You first go through a very small muddy island where you must go on the small house to avoid being slowed down by the mud. You then trick on a ramp to be able to trick and grind on more tentacles to get to Rocky Cliff. You must avoid falling in bottomless pits in the Stone Canyon. The next section has you avoid several whirlpools that try to suck you in until you get to another island where you play your gas track. I think you all saw these tracks coming for this DLC. Woohoo Loop and MKWorld, the Wii Sports Resort crossover tracks from Mario Kart 7.
Or Woohoo Island Loop and Woohoo Mountain Loop for our British friends.
Are literally the perfect choices from the 3DS Retro selection for this DLC. First, they are both huge fan favorites, and they're probably the most popular Mario Kart 7 Nitro tracks among fans, excluding its revered Rainbow Road of course. Then, they are very unique, being the first crossover tracks ever for a Mario Kart game, and the first section tracks ever too. Not only this, but it's of course inspired by Wii Sports Resort, a game that inspires nostalgia for a lot of people who grew up with the Wii, including me. So this gives the course a lot of free roaming potential, because it would probably be amazing to explore Woohoo Island in this mode, especially since it will be kind of reminiscent of the Island Flyover minigame. You know, that one minigame with the eye points that drove me nuts growing up. I was so inclined to get all of them because I was really excited to know what I would get for 100%ing this mode in particular, and it took me months and months, sweating, bleeding, and crying to get the last one. My parents would often play with me to try and help me find some of them that we really couldn't find and had to go on the internet to discover, even though it was actually already way less developed at this time. And I especially remember the sheer joy I felt when, after months and months of searching, I found the last eye point in Stillwater Grotto, which is fittingly considered to be the hardest one to get. I was fucking ecstatic. Even the simple house you get after finishing this mode was more than enough to make me feel the biggest amount of joy one could possibly.
Okay, first, we're talking about Mario Kart, not Wii Sports Resort. Secondly, this is a Mario Kart prediction video, not a storytime video. You can leave your amazingly captivating childhood for another time. We have a hypothetical DLC full of wishful thinking and coping to finish.
Okay, sorry. My point is, these tracks would be perfect for Mario Kart World's DLC, with their uniqueness, their popularity, and their free roaming potential. And this isn't all. This also works with the changing lap gimmick. We could start the track with Woohoo Loop for the first lap, but then the second lap is Maka Woohoo. This would be the perfect track to raise the stakes of this cup. On one hand, it could make for a pretty long track, but that's nothing the game can't handle, since it's as long as tracks like Rainbow Road in the base game. And since both are tracks that are packed with beautiful scenery, creative ideas, various obstacles, and the different landmarks from Woohoo Island, this wouldn't create a situation like with the original versions of N64 Royal Stadium and N64 Rainbow Road, where the track ends up overstaying its welcome. Simply put, a Woohoo Island combined track like this would be the perfect cliffhanger to end this cup. And we don't even need to change the tracks that much. Maybe we could add some grind rails to the ruined section in Woohoo Loop, water geysers in the gate near the castle in Makawoohoo, and lava in the cave section. But otherwise, these tracks can be pretty much left intact, and that epic gliding section would be perfect to end this cup, as it may be the most beautiful section in Mario Kart 7 as a whole. Simply put, an amazing ending to the Fruit Cup. And that's the Fruit Cup finished. This last cup may have had a more joyful and upbeat atmosphere than the two previous ones, but it certainly didn't skimp on the ambition and originality in terms of layouts, gimmicks, and themes. The next cup is gonna be the Boo Cup. It will take place on this island on the map, which is inspired by Kyushu, another big island of Japan. For Pokemon fans, this is the island that inspired the Horn region. Since this island also does have big volcanoes, this allows for a cup with a more harsh and intimidating theme to show that things are going to continue to get more and more epic and climactic, and that we're slowly approaching the end now.
You lucky turtles live so long.
My reason for imagining this first track is a bit quirky. Let me start at the beginning. A bit before writing this video, I decided to watch videos about Sonic Racing Cross World's demo to see what the fuss was about and how the tracks looked. One that caught my eye is the Museum. I really like the museum theme and the idea of the exhibitions coming to life on lap 3 with the ghosts that give a night to the museum theme. But there aren't really that many gimmicks, obstacles and ideas that inject the museum theme into the actual track like a course like Coconut Mall does, because Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, from what I've seen, is a bit more about raw layout. So yeah, this track kind of has wasted potential, but the museum course would honestly slay in Mario Kart. Let's make a track with this theme for the DLC. You start the track by climbing a small set of stairs before going in the corridor to enter the exhibitions. The first one is a prehistoric themed one. You grind on a fossilized dinosaur's back to go on the top of a cliff. You then take a couple of turns with boneheads trying to bite your cart. You then go to an ancient Egypt style exhibition.
Flashbacks.
No, stop it, Rookie. We don't talk about these. Anyway, this room will have you go through a platform above quicksand with tight blocky turns before you enter a representation of a pyramid. In this pyramid, you go through twisty turns with half-pipes and pillars that try to crush you. After this, you enter the Middle Ages exhibition. You first go through a fortress with a giant eye you can bounce on before you go on a pirate ship. You must trick on several sticks and avoid obstacles like spikes, holes in the boat, and a giant swinging anchor. You speed on the sea, then in a corridor, before gliding to exit the museum and end the gap. This will be a great way to start the Boo Cup, with a more intricate layout and more varied themes that show that things are really going to get crazier and crazier. The next intermission has you go into sewers, as the day turns to sunset with a canal leading you underground. You must avoid some puddles on the floor before you jump on a curvy road. Here, metal balls are rolling, and you must avoid them to avoid getting crushed. There is also a half pipe on the top of this turn. After this, you then go through a section with moving platforms and grind rails where you must avoid falling into the green slime. Then, you exit the sewers to glide towards the city, where you play the second track.
Mushroom?
This segment is gonna be shorter. Something that kind of disappointed me with Mario Kart World Space game is that in spite of the amazing remakes that Dino Jungle and Peach got, we got no tracks from Double Dash that haven't been remade before. And it sucks, because the 4 tracks that are left, being Mushroom City, Wario Coliseum, Bowser's Castle and Rainbow Road, all have potential for really good remakes that could look amazing in glorious HD. So for this cup, I'm gonna remake Mushroom City. Given that we're about at the third quarter of the DLC, we're at the point that would be equivalent to a Star Cup in a base game, and Mushroom City was originally a Star Cup track. Then, this track is also a bit of a fan favorite among fans. Not as popular as DK Mountain or Daisy Cruiser, but many players have been hoping for its return for quite a long time. And I think that it's time to finally bring this course back. We don't even need to change it that much. Maybe we could just add grind rails on the sides of the bridge and wall riding that you could take through rooftop shortcuts, along with a guiding section at the end of the track. But otherwise, this course is good as these, and it doesn't need a huge glow up to remain enjoyable, and a track that many people would be happy to see in the DLC. The next intermission takes you out of the city at night, as you start by going near a cliff where monsters are trying to attack you. You then go on the sea again. You can grind on several sunken ships to take some big shortcuts, but you must also avoid the cannonballs they shoot on you. You then go through a tunnel of purple moss that you must avoid before you go to the next track.
There's no such thing as a friendly ghost.
Okay, first let me check something. Okay, Gaston is not here. You can start.
Banshee Boardwalk is a track that honestly needs to get a second remake for a very special reason. This remains the only Nintendo 64 track that was never playable online. To understand why, let me elaborate about the online mode of Mario Kart's DS. This game had 12 tracks that couldn't be played online, and it included the remake of Banshee Boardwalk, so even with this game, it was unplayable online. Not only that, but it has not been remade in the Booster Coast Pass, nor in Tour, nor in the Mario Kart World base game, and the worst is that it seems like it was planned for Tour, so in another universe we could have gone this in the Booster Coast Pass. But no, it remains the only Mario Kart 64 track that is yet to be playable online. So I think it's about time that this track gets a new remake. This track has an amazing, eerie atmosphere with an intricate layout, making it perfect for this slot. But it could also use the new mechanics from Mario Kart World to make it more interesting, so here's how I would personally improve it. First, I would turn this spot into a giant rocky island with a canyon. There is a giant muddy lake and you must go through these aisles by taking a more curvy trajectory, then jump on a shipwreck. There are several masts that you have to avoid all falling. After this, you enter the ruined chapel, where you must avoid moss to not get slowed down. You can also grind on the wooden rails to take shortcuts in this part. Finally, at the end, the boardwalk turns to a slope and you glide over the finish line. You can also ride or grind on a wooden wall to try and take a mushroom shortcut over a muddy island upon ending the lap. This would be the perfect way to give Banshee Boardwalk the spotlight it deserves again, and since it was never playable online, I'm sure many people who grew up in Mario Kart 64 or DS would love to see this track being brought back. For the last intermission, you go back on the end to get to Rocky Canyon. There are grind rails you can use to go from one edge to the other safely. Cannons are shooting cannonballs on the road and you must avoid them. Then, you have a small roundabout before you get to lava section. On this spot, you must trick from one stone platform to the other. You can also rail grind on their edge. After this, you exit the canyon to get to Lava Lake, where you play the last track of this cup.
This lava is not a criminal. It hasn't hurt anybody.
So for this track, I actually don't have that much of a reason to pick it for this video. I just thought it would fit nicely in Mario Kart World with the number of obstacles that float on lava that this course has, as it will make for some neat shortcuts. And since Kyushu, the island that this cup is based on, has a lot of volcanoes, it makes sense to have it here.
Okay, so apparently your condition of Comp Andy is getting worse and worse, and you're having a condition of Place Japan too? What does it mean?
It means that soon he's gonna start using the term casual player like a slur. I also think that this would fit the end of the Boo Cup well, as at this point we're nearing the end and the DLC is almost over. So we have to let the player know that the final showdown is approaching and that it won't be easy, with a track that's both hard and climactic, and Grumble Volcano, with its dark atmosphere and chaotic feeling, is perfect for this. Just like with Mushroom City, we don't need to change this track that much either. The first part of the volcanic cave will have the ruins of a castle, since on the map, this track is located close to Bowser Castle 2, just one inlet away from it. You can wall ride on those castle walls and grind on the guardrails. With rail grinding on one of those walls, you can even get to another path that allows you to glide above the volcano. If you don't, you will instead go through the cave, except it's now filled with lava that you can use for mushroom shortcuts. I added a pipe that allows you to trick or gain altitude during gliding outside of the volcano, and another glider ramp here. This one allows you to grind here for a shortcut or to make your flight longer with some ramps. This would be the perfect way to cap off this cup and to tell the player that the DLC is soon gonna be over and that the last two cups are gonna be true gauntlets now. Now we get to the penultimate cup of the DLC, the Bullet Bill Cup. This is gonna be a hard one, because after all, we're getting close to the end. So this one should be a cup that's very difficult and ambitious, but that still feels like you're not done yet, so we leave the player wanting even more going forward. So this cup is gonna take place on this island, inspired by the island of Hokkaido in the north of Japan. As such, This cup is mainly going to take on a snowy/mountainous theme. It's gonna start with upbeat tracks that motivate you to go forward to the end of this DLC before slowly transitioning to tracks with a harsher atmosphere to remind the player that now the DLC is giving you its biggest, hardest gauntlets from now on.
No need to worry.
As I said, we're gonna start this cup with a hard, but still happy and upbeat track to motivate the players that they can get that first place and to make them excited to discover the last two cups. And I think it's the perfect moment to place our second Pokemon themed track here. You see, the Sinnoh region from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl is based off of the Japanese island of Hokkaido, and if you recall correctly, this cup takes place on an island that is inspired from it. So I thought it made sense to have a track based on Sinnoh as well. And I chose to base it off of Jubilee City, the biggest city in the Sinnoh region. This made sense to me, as it's based off of Sapporo, which is the most populated and biggest city on this island, and one of the most populated cities of Japan too. To fit the theme of this cup, I could imagine this track taking place in a snowy weather, while still making it feel warm, inviting, and cheerful to start this cup in an exciting way. Plus, this would fit the personality of Dawn, who is the only main character who's from the Sinnoh region. Given her cheerful, gentle, and optimistic personality, this track would fit her as well. And this track is gonna be a changing gap track as well, since after all, it takes place in the city. The first gap takes you through a roundabout before you enter an ice rink. You have to avoid several Pokemon themed obstacles while riding on slippery ice. You then exit to go down a Cobraja themed slide before ending this short gap. The second gap is different. You first turn right on the roundabout to jump on train tracks. You can grind on them, but you also have to beware not to fall off and to avoid the train that's rolling on them. You then go on giant stairs that take you through rooftops. Here, you must go from one rooftop to another before you go back on the road to end this gap. The final gap starts with the ice rink, but then you exit it to jump in a contest hall. You have to go on several platforms based off of Pokemon types, like Psychic-themed bouncy rings, a Piplup-shaped platform, and water geysers. You then get shot out of a cannon back to the rooftops, and the end of the final lap is the same as the end of lap 2. This track would be a good way to pump up the mood of the player by making them motivated to do their best for the final two cups, and making them excited to play this cup after the darker Brew Cup. For the first intermission of the Bullet Bill Cup, you first go through a cave with a very tight slippery road. You can also go on half pipes here. You then grind on rails above a bottomless pit in the cave before riding on an icy wall. You then land out of the cave on an ice road, on with speed boosts and split paths as you go down the mountain to get on Sakura Plains. Here, you can grind on several cherry blossom trees to take shortcuts until you enter a village, where you'll play the next track in the cup. This might be cliché, but for a DLC that takes place in a region inspired by Japan, we obviously have to have a track that takes place in a Sakura field.
Okay, sorry to be gone for a couple of minutes. I had to keep guessing away for her to not go mad at the mention of Japan.
After all, there has never been a track like this in the Mario Kart franchise, 3DS Mario Circuit being the closest thing we got, so a track like this would make sense. I chose to put it in the Bullet Bill Cup for 3 reasons. First, this cup takes place on an island inspired by Hokkaido, which does have a good share of traditional Japanese-style villages. Secondly, this will be a good second course for this cup, because since we're going from a happy and upbeat snowy track to a more sporty and intense track in this cup, Sakura Village fits as the second track as a calmer track before the stakes get higher in the second half of the cup. Thirdly, this more unique theme fits the cup because it allows for a more intricate layout and varied gimmicks. Here's how the layout would look. The track starts in the street with several ninjas attacking you where you can grind on traditional rooftops. You then go through a bridge where you can trick on. Then you go on a spinning umbrellas while you can also wall ride on several stone walls. Then you go inside a giant cherry blossom tree. You first go on a circular plaza with a big hole making a roundabout. You then go on a bridge above this plaza. After this, You jump on an icy canyon with a slippery road. You can grind on the ropes between the snowy edges of the canyon while wall riding on those edges too. After this, you jump back on the again. You then enter a ninja house with several traps as you must avoid wooden walls and spikes. You then get on rapids, with lily pads and stones you can trick on, stone walls you can ride on, and waves to trick or drift as well, before you turn right to end the trek. This would have been a good spiritual successor for Cheap Falls, with an even more varied layout, a rare sakura theme, and a cool atmosphere. The next intermission starts in the icy canyon from the previous trek. You have to avoid several bottomless pits, and you can jump above them with mushrooms to try for a shortcut. Then, you go down this canyon to get onto a rocky plateau. You must use speed boost to avoid being slowed down by the mud while taking a tight turn. You then turn right to enter a temple, where you'll play your next track.
They're selling chocolate! They're selling chocolate! Yeah!
It has been a long time since we had a Nitro track with the famous Charco theme. The last one was Charco Mountain in Mario Kart 64, and since these tracks remain really basic despite more complex remakes for Choco Mountain's case, I think this theme could have a new course, taking place in rooms that look like chocolate.
Time to spam the SpongeBob meme. Chocolate!
Here's how the layout would look. The track starts with you turning right to go through a muddy lake. You have to avoid boulders that are falling in this lake before going on islands where you have to trick above very small muddy rivers. You can also grind on some rails above the mud and wall ride on a big rock. Then you enter the rooms. You can wall ride on the walls of the first room thanks to a grind rail. You then go on a road above bottomless pits with a lot of twisty turns and chocolate boulders to avoid rolling towards you. You can also grind on some of the sides of this road and trick on half pipes. Then, you exit this room to go to another part of the rooms. You must avoid the fire that a giant leaf head is spitting towards you. Then, there is a shaking bridge with half pipes you can trick on. You then glide above the road to exit the ruins and turn right to end the trek. This course would have a more common theme, but with its varied obstacles, its harsher atmosphere, and its intricate layout, it will be a natural progression for this cup after the more happy first two tracks. The next intermission has you go through a part of the rocky plateau again with a muddy lake to avoid that you can also jump above with a grind rail. You then get on the snow mountain again. After some turns, you start gliding above air currents before you get on a straightaway where you must avoid avalanches. You then get on an airplane to get through a conveyor belt section before you get to the last track of the cup, and I think some of you may have already guessed what this track is gonna be.
Isn't it cool? This stuff is called snow!
The penultimate cup of this DLC is gonna end with the Mario Kart 8 fan favorite track, Mount Wario. Of course, we had to put this track in the DLC. It's a perfect Wii U track for World. First, it feels like an adventure, which is part of what Mario Kart World's open world class is about. Plus, once again, with its big sides and its various snowy landscapes, this course will be an absolute blast to explore in free roam. And this course completes the cup well. It started with a joyful, upbeat track before getting more intense. Jubilife Shore is a course with a happy and upbeat atmosphere, followed by Sakura Village, a track that's already calmer but still laid back. We continue with Choco Ruins, a track with a more inhospitable theme, before ending the cup with Mount Wario, which is an epic finale with an intense theme and hardcore rock music. Plus, this completes it even better, because you start with a joyful winter track and you end with an intense winter track. So this is a perfect ending for the Boys Bill Cup, in addition to making people excited for the grand finale. The layout won't undergo as many changes as most retro tracks, but it will still be adapted to Mario Kart World's new mechanic, so it can feel like a test of skill if you're truly capable of going for the final cup. I added some speed boost on the side of the road you can wall ride on in the first section, and the cave area will be completely changed. It will have grind rails on different colors and you have to jump from one of them to another. However, I kept the ice rocks along with stalactites so you can jump and trick off of them to take big shortcuts. The Wario Dam section is now a factory. with several minecarts you have to avoid. And in the forest section, the trees would now be trickable, like most obstacles in Mario Kart World. This track would be the perfect way to end the Boitsville Cup, by changing the track a bit to make it feel new, while retaining what made it a fan favorite in the first place. And we finally move to the final cup in the DLC, the Moon Cup. Now, the special cup from the base game was really disappointing. Not enough that it sported a simple plains theme, which is very basic for what's supposed to be the final cup in the game, but none of the tracks are climactic enough to be in the special cup, aside from the obvious exception. Acorn Heights is a fun track, but it doesn't fit the special cup at all. There are a lot of tracks in the game that are harder and more appropriate to be in this slot, compared to Acorn Heights and its calm theme, along with a layout that's a bit too easygoing to be this late in the game. It should have been in the Banana Cup or the Leaf Cup. Then, Mario Circuit is just embarrassing. You're telling me that the second track of the final cup is this? 3 tracks that were already remade in other games and that don't even have that much of a glow up apart from the fact that they're all connected? Oh, and also, yet throw out Mario Circuit 4 in the bin, just because. This is way too simple for the special cup, because it's just a circuit with gap changing and without Mario Circuit 4, even though it's the only SNES Mario Circuit that hasn't got a remake yet. But of course, we can remake Mario Circuit 3 for the bajillionth time! This is way too simple to be anywhere beyond the Banana Cup. Peach Stadium is a good course, but same. It doesn't feel climactic enough to be the penultimate track of the game. DK Spaceport, Great Question Block Ruins, Bowser's Castle, Airship Fortress, or Dry Bones Burnout are right here, and you pick a track that's really just a Mario Kart Stadium with a hard layout. So yeah, that special cup was disappointing. So I'm gonna make sure that the Moon Cup serves as a true finale for Mario Kart World, because a game with such amazing ideas deserves to go out with a more climactic cup than this shit. As such, I'm gonna try to mix returning tracks that people would actually like to see again, new tracks with more original and climactic themes, and a higher difficulty than the special cup. The Moon Cup will take place in the urbanized region of the map where you played much of the Golden Dash Cup, to have this whole ending feel like you're looping back to where you started. However, it's also going to take place in the eastern area of the urbanized region rather than its western area, and it's also going to have tracks with the most out of the blue and original themes to be a competent finale for the DLC and Mario Kart World in general. It will have to feel festive, energetic, and epic at the same time, just like the finale of a very popular championship. And this is where the hardest tracks in the DLC are gonna be, to make for a perfect final challenge for the players. I'll also try to make the intermissions a bit longer and more intense than in the previous cups, to make the whole thing feel like an actual gauntlet to end Mario Kart World with a bang.
40 quarters. This better be good.
So one of the first ideas I ever had in my life for fan-made Mario Kart tracks ever was a track based on an arcade room. I first got this idea when I was way younger, and I saw a video from a channel named Waluigi the Master about their Nitro track ideas for Mario Kart 9, when prediction videos for the next Mario Kart games in line were slowly starting to become a more popular topic in the Mario Kart community. One of the tracks they predicted was a casino based on Waluigi, and I really loved that idea. And slowly but surely, I had the idea to expand this concept by making it a full-on arcade track, so we can exploit even more ideas in it. But instead of a Waluigi track, my version will be a Luigi track, because it's now been 14 fucking years since he has got a track, and I could totally see him have an arcade room since he also owns a casino.
By the way, I hope South Korea doesn't ban the track like they did with Luigi's Casino in New Super Mario Bros. DS.
I decided to make it a gap-changing track, because that way this offers more possibilities in terms of different types of game you could go in. You start the track by going on a roulette that you use as a roundabout in every lap. You go straight to get into a crane machine. Here, you can bounce and trick on several plushies, but you can also wall ride on the crane. After 2 twisty turns, you enter a pinball machine, similar to the final section in Waluigi Pinball. You then enter a game inspired by the original Mario Bros. Here, you have to avoid several enemies from the game while tricking on sewer platforms before you trick on moving platforms. You then avoid ice enemies before exiting the game to end the first lap. The second lap has you turn left on the roulette and you enter a Pac-Man style game. You must avoid spiny balls that are rolling in a maze. The second part of this lap is the same Mario Bros. Machine. However, the final lap will be completely different. You don't turn left to end the second lap. Instead, you start it by entering another machine. This is a Space Invaders-like game. You must trick on several spaceships to avoid falling into the void. You then enter a bigger spaceship where you must avoid falling into green slime. After this, you get into a minecart game. You must grind on the rails while avoiding minecarts and jumping from rail to rail. Then, you enter a pinball machine that is more complex than the previous one. You grind on several rails, avoid bigger pinballs, and you face more obstacles. You then go back on the roulette to end the track backwards. This course will be an amazing way to start the final cup, with an original theme, a varied layout, and a very energetic atmosphere, but it also won't steal the show for the rest of the cup. Perfect to start the final showdown. The first intermission of this cup has you exit the arcade room to go through a road with spikes throwing you spiky balls from the sides.
The Mario enemies, not the dragon, nor the dog.
You then go through some twisty turns before gliding into a deep canyon. In this canyon, you can go on the ropes to grind from one edge to the other and trick on the waves that the rapids are making. You must also avoid boulders that are falling into the river. You then enter a volcanic cave with split paths and lava geysers that you gotta avoid. After this, you get back on the road and you jump on rocky platforms above a lava river. You then enter a new building where you'll play the second track of this cup. The second track of this cup was a no-brainer for me. Wario Colosseum is basically perfect for the Moon Cup. First, its very hard and twisty layout, as well as its very long length, makes it one of the most unique tracks in the series. In spite of not having many obstacles, this course pulls no punches with difficulty, with twisty and tight turns that you often have to manage one directly after the other, especially in 150cc. With the Colosseum theme, the hard layout, the energetic music, and the dark color palette, this makes it feel like a true test of skills, showing you that the finale won't play around. So a track like this fits the second slot of this cup perfectly before the big two begin, as I like to call them. And while the track doesn't need huge modification, I think we could add some of them to make the course feel more dangerous, because it's Wario's track after all. My man's so greedy and rich that he really has a mountain.
The first Nintendo hater who compares them to Wario or Mr. Krabs for the 50th time, you're suspended of this channel for a week.
At the start of this track, there could be an artificial fire vortex. There could be rocks floating on it, and you could roll or wall ride on them. There could also be rails everywhere on the track to make it feel even more fun. I'd add a small glider section in the cage, and some fake stormy clouds too that serve as obstacles. There would also be giant spears attacking you. The big roundabout would be a giant water whirlpool that is trying to suck you in. But the biggest change is that now this course would also have a rock concert theme, with Dr. Krygor, Penny Krygor, Mike the Robot, and Mona from WarioWare playing rock and roll, making the atmosphere epic with a rock remix of the Mario Kart Double Dash Stadium theme. This course would really be a great way to amp up the stakes of this final cup, with a fun layout, more varied than original obstacles, and a very climactic atmosphere. The next intermission starts with you exiting the Colosseum, as you first have to avoid falling into quicksand. To do this, you can grind on ropes above it or drift tightly near the grass. You then go for a bridge, but it's broken. You take a sharp left turn to go on fragile rocky platforms as you trick from one of them to another. You then jump in the downtown, and you first go through a part of figure eight circuit, so you can remind yourself of how far you've come now. Then you grind on the rails before going on the main road again. After this, you start jumping on colorful clouds to get to the penultimate track of the cup.
Peaches, 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 peaches.
Just like Mushroom Aquarium, this is another course that I already featured in another form in my Mario Kart 9 video, adapted to the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Tower of course. Basically, imagine a track that takes place in a giant futuristic megapolis like Neo Bowser City, but much more upbeat, energetic, and joyful to fit the princess's personalities, as it would be a peach track, and therefore feel like a theme park or a touristic city like Las Vegas or Tokyo. This would be a really climactic penultimate track for this DLC, much more appropriate to be displayed than Peach Stadium, and much more difficult, testing your skills for each part of the game.
Huh? Could you say that we're getting J-pop Demon Hunters soon?
Oh, I guess not, sorry Gaston. But yeah, let's get to the layout. One thing I tried to do for this track is to make it feel like a roller coaster, with high speed and various types of tricks. Think of what the tracks in Sonic Crosswords will feel like. And to feel climactic, it will be a section-based track. You start the course in a giant dome that has a view of the entire Megalopolis, so you can have a glimpse of what awaits you in this track. Then, you have two twisty turns with half pipes and speed boosts before you're thrown in a flashy water slide. Here, you can use geysers to trick and perform broken shortcuts and trick on some waves too. You must avoid the boys that are going down the water slide. You then jump on some rooftops before going on another ride, a roller coaster. Except this one is made out of grind rails, with many carts to avoid, twisty turns, a jump to perform from rail to rail, and a big loop-de-loop to finish it off. You then jump in a building to start section 2, which will mostly take place in a candy land, as it fits Peach, who actually got a board on a giant cake in the very first Mario Party game. First, you go on a giant ice cream sundae. You must circle it to get on top of it. You must avoid chocolate puddles, chocolate chip borders, cream puffs that cover your screen, and you can trick on other chocolate chips too. You then glide towards the licorice road with lollipops that act like cameras that you must avoid, a bit like the possessed night armors in Twisted Mansion. Then, you jump on several spinning donuts that you can also grind on, until you get shot out of a cannon to the skyline of the Megalopolis, where you play the final section of the track. You first enter a flashy rendition of Peach's castle before speeding to grind on its roof. You then bounce on several colorful clouds before getting on a roulette where golden chain chomps are trying to attack you, reminiscent of the Battle Course chain chomp roulette for Mario Kart Wii.
Also, Nintendo, could you please give us actual metal maps from that game? We fans are currently dying!
You then trick from one golden airship to another before speeding on several rooftops with grind rails and trick ramps. After this, you get on a pole with some wooden grind rails and a giant boat you must get on to jump on the next rooftop. Finally, you glide towards the second dome to end the track, and upon getting on it, it would be cool if you could actually see the dome from which you started the track from upon finishing it, to give you that nice feeling of realizing the place you started the race from is this far, especially if you could see other parts of the layout like the roller coaster or the ice cream sundae from this point too. This track would really be an amazing penultimate from the game. It almost works like a test of skills to see if you're truly capable of overcoming the long-awaited Rainbow Road. And after all this time, you finally get to the finale, because for the last intermission, you turn left. You start gliding in the night sky towards a giant vortex. Here, giant lamps that shoot a pink light point to the vortex, and you can bounce on colored clouds to join it. You must also avoid asteroids. And then, you get to the final track once you enter the vortex. as you expected, it's a retro Rainbow Road, and the one I chose is Remix Rainbow Road 1. This Rainbow Road is really hard, with beautiful scenery, a very intricate and fun layout, and
Remember, nobody's buying this. You might as well cut to the actual finale of the DLC.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
yep, I think people who remember Mario Kart 7 and Mario Kart 8 well saw this coming. Of course, the finale had to be this track. It lines up perfectly. First, Nintendo didn't bring any GBA tracks back to Mario Kart World, which is a shame because as we saw with my ideas, but also with Nintendo's official Mario Kart 8 remix of GBA tracks, giving go-ups to those courses can make them really fun and packed with original ideas, like Ribbon Road and Cheese Land.
And then there are the remakes that remove tons and essential gimmicks.
Secondly, Mario Kart 7 ended its Lightning Cup with SNES Rainbow Road, and Mario Kart 8 ended it with N64 Rainbow Road. Following the order of the games, GBA Rainbow Road should be the retro Rainbow Road that gets remade in Mario Kart World just for consistency's sake. Thirdly, for the first time in almost 25 years, we have a game where this track's main gimmick could actually work again, despite an execution that could probably be different. The main appeal of this track was how a mushroom and the jump pads that acted like walls were enough for you to pull off insane shortcuts. In Mario Kart World, you are also able to pull off cuts like this by jumping off a rail ramp and then hitting other objects like pillars, trees, or rocks, so you could just throw stuff in the void for these shortcuts again. The jump pads could even be turned into grind rails to make these shortcuts even more inviting. And finally, you know how this track had a castle from the original Paper Mario in the background? Well, I had an idea to make for a successor for it. On this track, the origami castle from Paper Mario the Origami King could be progressively built and constantly be part of the track. It could start as a simple road of folded paper before progressively becoming the entire castle, and paper cubes could be the main things that float in space to allow you to take some shortcuts. So now, yes gets to the layout, and this time I decided to make a 10 laps track to change its layout every 2 laps, making for 5 variants you'll go through during a race. The first variant will start by taking you on a fire planet reminiscent of Venus, with fire rocks you could trick off from and maybe some podables to avoid. You must also try and trick from the rock platforms of this planet to avoid falling into the lava. The other planet is inspired by Neptune. Its road is very slippery. I added some grind rails, ice rock to trick off from them, and a giant tornado. I also put some grind rails near the end of the section to make of the most famous shortcut of the track easier to take. You jump on the origami platform twice before gliding off from them to end the lap. For the second variant, you start in Rainbow Rapids with some trees to trick off and the usual trickable waves too. You can bounce off some bubbles as well. Then you get on a sandy road with quicksand to avoid unless you take the main shortcut. The castle is now starting to take shape as in the next section you must go through its main room while avoiding origami cannonballs. You end the gap by gliding again. For the third variant, you start by grinding on rainbow rails. This section would be kind of a test of skills for grinding, as you must constantly jump from rail to rail. Then you get a section with walls you have to ride on. To test your wall riding skills, the famous shortcut would also be done through wall riding. Finally, the castle is now full of grind roads you must go on. You have to switch from grinding to wall riding and vice versa sometimes. You then go back on the road to end the gap. The full variant is already building up to the final one. You start with a U-turn on Mars, with giant golden chain chomps rolling towards you and some rails too. The next big section is a giant asteroid you must enter, and it could have lava walls. You can also do a shortcut in this small lava hole here. After this, you can do the shortcuts normally before entering the castle. This time, the road is shaking, allowing you to trick to your heart's content here, like with the Jack-Off Bridge and Maple Treeway. You then glide to end the gap, but the final variant will be like a true final boss for this DLC. Most of this variant will take place within the castle. In the first part, origami salt shakers shoot lasers that you must avoid. In the second castle section, you must avoid or trick on origami crane birds that are flying everywhere. You can even try for shortcuts by wall riding on the sun. The castle section will be like a final battle. King Ollie will make origami meteors fall on the boat, making temporary holes in it. You will have to perform several twisty turns while circling him before exiting the castle to end the track. This would be, simply put, the perfect way to end Mario Kart World, with the amazing shortcut tech, the different but climactic variants, and the epic music with the actually challenging layout. And with that, we have officially reached the end of this video and of the whole Mario Kart 9 Ideas video series. Thank you so much for watching it. It was a lot of fun to imagine how this game could turn out, even though sometimes I had to change my plans for some videos. And I'm really grateful that you all watched it and enjoyed it. I hope that you'll be here for the next times I decide to show my own Mario Kart concepts. You all made this worth it, and you already mean so much to me. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. With that said, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.
Bye bye.
I've been recording for 13 minutes and my tongue's fucking killing me!